This story has been told countless times among my family and close friends. It's one of those tales that sticks with you long after the first telling. Amanda, my brother's girlfriend at the time, had just started looking for her first apartment. She was ready to move out of her parents' house and start something new. Though she and my brother were dating, it was still early in the relationship, just a few months in, so moving in together wasn't on the table. She decided to find a roommate online instead. Craigslist back then was still a go-to. She came across a listing titled something like "Roommate Wanted, Females Only." That wasn't unusual for the area she was searching in. A lot of young women preferred to room with other women, especially around the local college. The ad described a room in a shared house going for just $225 a month, which was a steal compared to almost anything else in the area. The poster said she was a 23-year-old college student who wasn't comfortable living with men, which Amanda could respect. She'd have her own room and a private attached bathroom. So far, everything sounded great. But the listing only had one photo. Just the outside of the house, no interior shots. Still, Amanda decided to send an email asking to come by, meet the roommate, and tour the place. 30 minutes later, she got a reply. The roommate said she worked late hours, but Amanda could stop by at 8 p.m. She included the address and said her landlord would let Amanda in and show her around. When Amanda arrived at the house, she noticed something odd right away. Taped to the front door was a handwritten note. "Door broken. Use back door." Amanda walked around to the back. The house itself looked okay, but neglected. The lawn hadn't been mowed in weeks, weeds sprouted high around the porch, and the windows were streaked with grime. It wasn't enough to raise alarm, but it was strange. She knocked on the back door. An older man answered. Amanda hesitated. She thought she might have had the wrong house. The man looked nothing like a college student. He was in his 40s, unshaven, and wore worn-out clothes that made him look like he might be living out of his car. But before she could back away, he smiled and told her he was the landlord. The tenant, he said, had asked him to show Amanda around since she was working late. His tone was polite, friendly enough. He waved her in. That's when the first warning bells went off in Amanda's head. The man didn't just look rough. He looked like he hadn't had a proper shower or sleep in days. And something else. Only the kitchen light was on. The rest of the house was drowned in shadow. Still, she stepped inside. The house was silent, hollow. Amanda quickly noticed something else that was off. There was no furniture. No couch, no dining table, no pictures on the wall. Not even a rug. The place was completely empty. The man, still maintaining his pleasant tone, rushed her from room to room, answering her questions with short replies. But he seemed irritated any time she lingered or asked to keep the lights on for more than a few seconds. He let her glance into each room, but only for a moment. Then they reached one door he refused to open. He gestured toward it and told her that was the roommate's bedroom. He didn't want to invade her privacy, he said. Amanda nodded, feeling the tension in her stomach twist a little tighter. As they walked down the hall toward the front living room, Amanda noticed something else that chilled her. The front door, the one with the handwritten note, was indeed broken. Not just jammed, a thick wooden plank had been nailed across it diagonally, sealing it shut. Her instinct screamed at her. Something was very wrong. Trying to stay calm, Amanda decided it was time to go. She smiled politely, thanked the man for the tour, and began heading back toward the kitchen door. But just as she was turning away, the man suddenly brightened. "Oh, I almost forgot," he said. "I didn't show you the basement." Amanda froze. "It's newly finished," he continued, his tone a bit too enthusiastic. "Would make a great rec room. You should really see it." They were standing now in a narrow hallway between the living room and the kitchen. The basement door was right there, just to her left. He reached out, opened it, and it creaked outward, blocking the path behind her, cutting her off from the back door. The basement behind him was pitch black, no light, no sound, just a void that seemed to swallow everything. He smiled, standing to one side, and gestured toward the darkness. "Ladies first." Amanda's blood ran cold. At that moment, pure coincidence, maybe fate, her phone buzzed. A text lit up her screen just as a car pulled up out front. Someone was parking. Thinking fast, Amanda raised her phone to her ear and pretended to answer a call. "Hey, yeah, are you here? Okay, I'll come around back and let you in. It's great, you have to see it." She moved with purpose, brushing past the man, keeping her tone upbeat as she headed for the back door. He didn't say a word, just stared at her. Once outside, Amanda didn't hesitate. She ran. She sprinted to her car, flung the door open, and peeled out of the driveway like the devil was chasing her. When she got home, she told her mom and my brother everything. The police were called. She gave them a full statement, and they launched an investigation. The Craigslist post had already been taken down. The house, it had been foreclosed and vacant for more than 6 months. No one was supposed to be living there. But the scariest part came when police searched the house. That locked room the man had refused to open, that had been his lair. Dirty blankets littered the floor, along with rotting food and empty gallon jugs. The walls were plastered, covered in torn-up pages from porn magazines, all taped haphazardly over the peeling drywall. But the true nightmare was what they found in the basement. About halfway down the stairs, a thin line of fishing twine had been tied across the steps at shin height, just enough to trip someone descending into the dark. The basement itself was mostly empty, except for a small pile of blankets, a broom handle wrapped in cracked leather belts, and a shoebox. Inside the box were rolls of duct tape, electrical tape, medical tape, all different kinds. Amanda's quick thinking, that fake phone call might have saved her life. And none of us want to imagine what would have happened if she'd taken just one more step into that basement. It was sometime in the middle of summer, one of those long, quiet nights when sleep just wouldn't come. I was up late, scrolling through Craigslist on my old laptop, hunting for goalie equipment. I was only 14, no job, no allowance, so I had to find the cheapest gear possible. Condition didn't matter. I just needed something I could afford. Then I stumbled across an ad that seemed too good to be real. The pictures showed a full set: pads, blocker, glove, stick. All of it looked to be in great shape, barely used from what I could tell. And the price? $50. 50. For a full set? That was unheard of. Even used gear usually ran triple that. I thought maybe someone was just looking to get rid of it quickly. I jumped on it and texted the number listed. The guy responded right away. He asked a few casual questions about what I was looking for, and then, kind of out of nowhere, he asked how old I was. 14, I typed. His reply came a second later. That's awesome. Good to see someone so dedicated at your age. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It felt like a weird thing to say, maybe, but I figured he was just being friendly. Now, I wish I'd paid closer attention. I asked for his address so I could come check the gear out, but instead of giving me a location, he asked me what town I was in. When I told him, he offered to meet somewhere close by, somewhere within walking distance of my house. That didn't sit right with me. Still, I really wanted that gear. I hesitated, then agreed to meet him in the mall parking lot just down the street from my place. It was well lit, usually had a few cars even late at night. Seemed safe enough. I got there a few minutes early and stood alone in the spot I'd told him, right under a bright overhead light next to the old garden center. It was quiet, too quiet, just the occasional rustle of tree branches in the warm breeze and the distant hum of a vending machine nearby. Then a short toot of a horn broke the silence. I turned and saw it, a white van. It was parked away from the other cars, tucked in the far corner of the lot, almost like it was trying not to be seen. Just as I noticed it, I got a new text. I'm in the white van. Something inside me clenched. I responded quickly, telling him to come out and bring the gear over. He replied almost immediately, "It'll be easier if you just come in. We can do the exchange inside." My gut twisted into a knot. Every instinct I had screamed no. I didn't even reply. I turned and ran. I sprinted full speed out of the lot, down the block, not even looking back at first. My legs were shaking, heart hammering in my chest, breath shallow and fast. I finally dared a glance over my shoulder, and there it was, the white van, pulling out of the parking lot. Slowly, then turning onto the street behind me. Now there were two people in it. Someone else had moved into the passenger seat. Panic surged through me. I didn't want them to know where I lived. I couldn't lead them there. I veered off the sidewalk and ducked into someone's yard, leapt over a low fence into another backyard, and pushed my way through the dark, trying not to make noise. I crouched low, heart pounding, and hid behind a thick bush near the edge of the block. 20 seconds passed. Then I heard it, the low rumble of an engine. I peeked out. The van rolled past the end of the street and then made a turn, disappearing from view. I waited another minute, maybe two, before I finally made a break for home, cutting through side yards and alleyways just to be sure they wouldn't follow me. When I got through the door, my parents saw my face and knew something was wrong. I told them everything, every detail. My mom looked like she might cry. My dad looked furious. We called the police, but there wasn't much they could do. I hadn't caught the license plate. I hadn't gotten a clear look at either of their faces. And the Craigslist ad? Gone. It had already been deleted. All we could report was a suspicious white van. I tried to tell myself it was over, that nothing would come of it. But that night, after everything, I was lying awake in bed, still jittery, still replaying it all in my head, when I heard something. A low, steady hum. An engine. I crept to my bedroom window and pulled back the curtain just an inch. There, across the street, was the white van, just sitting there. The engine was running, headlights off. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Then, as if sensing me, the van rolled forward slowly and turned down the road, vanishing into the night again. I don't know if they saw me at the window. I don't know how they found my street, how they got that close. I've never seen the van again, but I still think about it, still wonder. And sometimes, when the streets are quiet and the air is still, I swear I hear the low growl of an engine idling just out of sight. To this day, it makes my skin crawl. I was trying to sell a dining room set on Craigslist. A beautiful, solid oak set, polished, classic, barely used. I listed it at $1,200 and added "slightly negotiable" in the title, hoping to draw a little more attention. The problem was, I lived out in the country, in a town so small it barely registered on most maps. Not exactly prime territory for high-volume buyers. For the first week, nothing, not a single message or call. Then, finally, one night, I got a call. The man on the other end had a voice that was off. It trembled slightly, like static creeping into the edges. And something about the way he spoke made the hair on my arms stand up. I can't quite explain it, but something felt wrong the moment he said hello. Still, he said he wanted to come take a look at the set and maybe make an offer. Eager for any real interest, I gave him my address. He told me he'd be over within the hour. It was already late. I figured he must live nearby, though in this area, nearby usually means at least 15 or 20 minutes away. I wiped down the furniture again, just to make sure it looked as good as possible. The doorbell rang 10 minutes later. That was my first shock. No one lives that close around here, no one. I opened the door, and everything in me froze. The man standing on my porch looked like he'd been pulled out of a ditch. He wore a stained white undershirt, yellow blotches blooming across the chest and under the arms. His pants sagged low, torn and baggy like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His graying mustache was tinged brown in the middle, nicotine maybe, and his hair stuck out in wild tufts, greasy and uneven, like he'd cut it himself in the dark. And then there were his eyes, bloodshot, wide, staring through me like I was already a ghost. "Hello," he rasped in that same quivering voice from the phone. I hesitated, but invited him in. The dining room was the first room visible from the entryway, and his eyes locked onto the set the moment he stepped through the door. Without saying anything else, he shuffled toward it slowly. His footsteps were oddly heavy, deliberate. He ran his hands along the edges of the table, the backs of the chairs, moving as if he were touching something sacred. He made these low, guttural sounds as he did it, almost like cooing or purring. It was deeply unsettling. Trying to break the tension, I finally said, "Just so you know, I'm asking $1,200 for the whole set." He froze mid-stroke, then slowly turned his head toward me and smiled. Not just any smile, the kind of smile that makes your spine lock up. Lips stretched too wide, eyes unblinking, a grin that looked like it hurt to hold. "How about 500?" he said, voice low, stretched out like a drawl. I gave a nervous laugh, trying to keep the mood light, almost convincing myself this was just some eccentric guy. "That's a bit too low for me," I replied. "I'd be willing to go down to 1,000, but that's really the lowest I can do." His smile vanished instantly. It was like watching a mask melt off. He raised both hands to his head and started making these strange groaning noises, like he was trying to shake something out of his skull. Then he began pacing, back and forth, back and forth. The sound of his feet dragging along my hardwood floors echoed like a metronome of panic. When he looked at me again, there was no friendliness in his face, just rage. Something was wrong with this man, deeply, dangerously wrong. I apologized, told him I appreciated him coming out, and gave the most obvious social cue I could. "Thanks for stopping by." But he didn't move. He just stood there, staring, breathing. The weight of his glare was crushing. It wasn't awkwardness, it was hostility, thick and suffocating. He was bigger than me, older too, and I was starting to realize that if things went south, I probably wouldn't win that fight. Then he shifted, slowly. His hand moved toward his back pocket. My stomach dropped. It was like my body moved before my mind did. I bolted up the stairs, heart thundering in my ears. I ran into my bedroom and straight into my closet, where I kept my .45. Hands shaking, I loaded it, took cover behind the wall. Every breath felt like a scream. I peeked around the corner, into the hallway, then down toward the dining room. He was gone, vanished. I stepped slowly back into my room and locked the door. I called the police. I didn't care if I sounded crazy. My voice shook as I whispered into the phone, telling the dispatcher everything. Then I waited, behind the bed, gun in hand. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every shadow looked like it might move. It felt like hours before I finally heard the sirens. They pulled up fast. I stayed behind the bed, just in case. For all I knew, that man was standing right outside my door with a knife, or worse. The front door creaked open. I heard voices calling out. I raised my hands and stepped into the hallway, gun lowered, ID in hand. They led me outside while they searched the house. I sat on the porch, shaking. 5 minutes later, the 2 officers emerged from the front door, dragging the man in handcuffs. They told me something that still makes my skin crawl to this day. He had been hiding in my pantry closet, cramped between the shelves, crouched behind the door, with a loaded gun. I don't know how they weren't shot. I don't know what stopped him from ambushing them. But what truly haunts me, what replays in my nightmares, is the last thing I saw. As they drove him away, he looked at me through the rear window of the police car. That same look from earlier, twisted, burning, malicious. It was a look that said, "I'll be back." It's been months, and I still haven't shaken it. Some nights I lie awake, staring at the shadows creeping across the wall, thinking about that look, that face, that moment. I'm seriously thinking about moving. I can't handle the paranoia anymore. If there's anything to learn from this, it's this. Be careful. So careful about who you let into your home from Craigslist.